Today on HotType, 20,000 people died today of extreme poverty, and it's going to happen again every day until this man, Jeffrey Sachs, gets his wish. The world's most influential economist has issued a challenge to our generation to end world poverty in the next 20 years. His plan is all in his controversial new book, The End of Poverty, Economic Possibilities of Our Time. 1, 2...
HotType with Evan Solomon.
You know, it's not often that an economist becomes an international celebrity, the kind of guy that Bono wants to hang out with, the kind of guy that Kofi Annan calls in to be his special advisor to the UN, the kind of guy that governments like the Polish government, the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, the Bolivians call in to save them from economic ruin. But such is the case with a guy called Jeffrey Sachs. Sachs has a new book out called The End of Poverty, and in it he has a radical proposal. He wants to end extreme poverty by the year 2025. That's saving almost 1 billion people from what will be death or certainly a miserable life.
Our generation can give the greatest gift.
Jeffrey Sachs has been named one of the 100 most influential people in the world right now by Time magazine. Bono, the lead singer of U2, calls Sachs, quote, the people's economist, a man who's more like a Harlem preacher than a Boston bookworm.
We can realistically foresee the end of poverty in our time.
As a student at Harvard University, Sachs studied the German hyperinflation of 1923, the kind of inflation that the famous economist John Maynard Keynes used to quip about. He'd say, always order 2 beers at the start of a drinking session, lest their price go up while you're sitting at the bar. It was a legend. Now, Sachs became the youngest tenured professor at Harvard ever at the age of 28, and he was soon to become the economist who makes house calls. The year was 1985, and Bolivia's hyperinflation was looking a lot like Germany's, only this time it was breaking records.
I went in part because, my God, in our own times there was an actual hyperinflation. I had read about it in the books, read about the German hyperinflation. Now I could see it. The chance actually to do something to help to stop it, well, this was obviously captivating.
And you go and you have a very quick prescription. Now, the media has called this the first example of Jeffrey Sachs's shock therapy. What do you do under the so-called rubric of shock therapy?
The first thing that I did say in Bolivia is it's not that you're going to go from 24,000% this year to 5,000% the next year to 600% the next year to 87% the year after. This isn't gradual. It's going to stop. When it stops, when you finally do it, it's really going to stop. That's what history shows. I showed them some pictures at an early luncheon that they had in the Chamber of Commerce. You see, in Germany, it stopped in a day. And it did stop in Bolivia at the end of August 1985. It stopped suddenly.
When prices finally stabilized in Bolivia, the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, decided that, well, it was time Bolivia resumed payments on its foreign debt. You owe.
I said, you can't start collecting the foreign debt. You're going to break the stabilization. The government's going to go back to printing money. There's going to be riots in the streets. What are you doing? And the IMF said, well, those are the rules. Now it's time for you to start paying. And I took up the cause, and successfully in that case, of championing a cancellation of Bolivia's debts.
The next stop for Jeffrey Sachs was Poland. It was the critical year of 1989, and Poland was switching from a communist country to a market-based one. Sachs went to Poland and he met with Solidarity leader Lech Walesa.
Of course, this was an amazing thing to be with Lech Walesa, and I said, Mr. Walesa, I'm here to talk to you about hyperinflation. I fear that Poland is slipping into hyperinflation. And immediately, one sentence out, he pounded the table and said, I didn't come here for an academic talk. I came here to talk about getting banks to Gdansk. And he said, write a plan. And I said, okay, we'll go home and we'll get it back to you shortly.
Soon, yeah.
And he said, no, tomorrow morning. I said, what? He said, yes, we're in politics. We need this tomorrow morning. And literally, my colleague David Lipton and I went and we stayed up all night and typed, I think, really the first comprehensive plan to transform a communist economy into a market economy. It was about 15 pages, and we went through key steps. And I must say, for an all-nighter, I think it was a pretty good job.
Once again, Sachs was able to successfully lobby the reluctant IMF to relieve Poland's debt burden.
And that was Soviet-era debt, and they needed a fresh start. Once they had the fresh start, then people and the markets trusted them.
The next stop for Jeffrey Sachs is the Soviet Union, and it doesn't go so well here. It's also on the cusp of economic chaos. Now, this is where Sachs first runs up against U.S. resistance to his economic prescriptions.